we're live. Hi there and welcome to the studio and welcome to another live stream coming to you from the Lawrence studio in the South Island of New Zealand. Pleasure to have your company here this morning. Please let me know if you can hear me and if you can see me. My goodness, I got a good one for you today. I'm really excited about this live stream actually. We're going to be painting seascapes and waves again. If you tuned into the last one, that seascape has progressed. I will be creating a full tutorial of that one. I'll be sharing that with my Academy students over on Tisch Academy. If you want to see that, go to tisch.academy. You'll find it top linked in the description down below. So check that out, but check it out in a couple of weeks when I finish it, yeah? All right, so loud and clear. Thank you, Jim Meeker. Jim Meeker in the house. Jim's my moderator. Really appreciate it, Jim. Awesome. And hey, good to see you, Lori and Lynn and Irene and so many people from the Academy are here. Phillips, Tamara, hey guys, how are you? Okay, so let me talk to you about what we're going to be painting today, and I've got it over here on my other screen, so I'll just go ahead and show you this one, and I'm going to click this button all fancy like. There we go. So at the moment, I'm really taken, and let me just switch on my little camera here. There we are. At the moment, I'm really taken with atmospheric, misty, subtle atmospheric effect. And this is a New Zealand subject. So these rocks are found down at the west coast of the South Island of New Zealand. And I'm so taken with these misty, subtle atmospheric effects and those planes of depth that you get within the landscape. And so we'll talk a little bit about this, but there's one thing that this painting is going to be missing. And I don't want to just copy this photograph, you see. I want to make it a little more interesting. So we'll talk about that today. Oh, I completely forgot to tell you. Okay, I'm here to answer questions. I'm going to try and get through as many questions as possible, but with these public live streams, it's difficult to answer everybody's question. I'll do the best I can. But if you've got a question, there's three ways that you can go about doing this. Number one, do what we do on the Academy. Type in 3 capital Qs first, and then your question. I've got you up on the screen just up here, okay? And so I'm monitoring that live chat, and I'm just kind of keeping my eye on it, but I'm going to be painting, so I might miss it, okay? If I miss your question, go ahead and ask it again. Don't be worried about spamming me in the chat, okay? Just go ahead and ask it again. Another way is to highlight my name. If you're fancy like and you know all the tech, you can do that. So you can highlight my name, and that way I'll be able to see you in the chat. And another way is, you don't have to do this, but another way is you can super chat me, and it highlights it and holds it at the top of the screen. So super chats are there and available, I'm pretty sure. But again, no pressure. You don't have to do that. But I'm just glad to have you here and be painting alongside with you. Okay, so the thing that this painting is missing, if I may say, is a bit of a wave. And I'm doing this quite a bit with my paintings, is I want to create something that's interesting, something that's harmonious, but something that has a little bit of contrast, a little bit of drama, a little bit of impact. There's something nice about these stoic, solid, heavy rocks. And then there's that, with that juxtaposition, that relationship of this fast, fluid, moving water. It's that unstoppable force meets the immovable object in a way. And so this interplay, this relationship between wave and rock, this is something that's been fascinating me for decades. And so I keep coming back to this subject. Even though some people might be like, oh, rocks, wave, whatever, I'm looking for a way that I can talk about that relationship. So if I'm going to be painting rocks in the seascape, normally I like to put a wave in it. If I'm going to be painting waves, normally I like to put some rocks in it. So here I'm going to be bringing these two references together on my little panel here. And what I'm going to be painting today, essentially, is going to be a study for a larger piece. So here's my panel here. This is what I'm going to be working on. This is about 6 by 14 inches. And so it's a little bit longer than a 2-to-1 kind of dynamic here. So it's a little bit longer than twice the height. So this is a very fine weave linen on I've got a little doohickey right there. Let's get that doohickey off. That's not very good, is it? That's not very professional. There we go. That'll do. It's about to get covered with paint and hermetically sealed. Okay, so this is a fine weave linen, and this is adhered to a plywood board. I like using plywood, not MDF. MDF seems to soak up the moisture. It's not very archival. And I've given this a tone with what's called an imprimatura. It is a combination of burnt umber and burnt sienna. I rubbed this back. This is going to give me a nice warm glow behind some of the brushwork that I'm going to be mixing. Okay, so over here, let's go over to my palette, and I'll show you what colors I'm going to be using. And we'll just get straight into it, shall we? Here we go. And let's see if who's hitting me up in the chat. I already got a few questions here. One from Cheryl. How does the rainbow look now the next day? Fantastic, Cheryl. Yeah, so Cheryl's, don't remind me. Cheryl is talking about a painting that we did yesterday on the live stream for the Academy, where I painted a rainbow. Okay, it's not as lame as it sounds, okay? All right, so don't go hating on me in the chat. It was actually a lot of fun. But technically, how the heck do you paint a rainbow? Well, I've worked out a couple of ways not to do it, and then maybe a way to do it, but that was good fun. Yes, Cheryl, it came out great. The block-in's all done, and I will be finishing the painting. I've got it leaning up against the floor over there in a frame. I'm not going to show it just yet, because I'm going to be filming that as a full tutorial and sharing that with you on the Academy, okay? All right, so how's the current climate for artists sales-wise, and what's the best way to reach the right audience? Sarmad, that's a fantastic question. The climate for painting sales is always awful, awful. A terrible climate for painting sales. And it's always the best time ever. It's always the worst time ever, and it's always the best time ever. It all depends on what's going on between your ears and what you're paying attention to. If you want to pay attention to economic collapse and election year and, oh my goodness, everything's going to crash and all that stuff, you will find legitimate reasons for believing that and going along with that narrative. If you believe, though, that there's opportunity everywhere, you will find a way to be able to put a painting in your buyer's hands. So that might sound like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but this is true, man. I believe this. So there's always a way to think outside a box and put this in a buyer's hands. And the best way, I mean, social media is great. We have tools today that I didn't have coming up. Like, I just didn't have this. So I built my career bricks and mortar way. But this is, you know, now I've said on my podcast several times, if you didn't know, yes, I've got a podcast. Check it out. It's called The Creative Endeavor. So that podcast, we talk about art and art business a whole bunch, and really talk about, you know, strategies for being able to market yourself. But I've said on that podcast so many times that I'm not painting a dinosaur, by the way, even though that kind of looks like a bit like a dinosaur head, doesn't it? There's never been a better time to be an artist. I'm sticking to that. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I really believe that there's never been a better time to be an artist. We've got so many tools at our fingertips now that you can make this work. So how's the current climate was the question? Great. Jump in, bro. Jump in. It's important, though, I'll just say one more thing about the marketing side of things. I get a lot of questions about this. But it's really important that if you try something that doesn't work, don't keep doing the same thing. And don't completely change direction. Just adjust, adjust, adjust. So it's just fine adjustments, and eventually you will find something that will work. All right. Have you worked out the new painting in Photoshop? No, I haven't. I am free-wheeling it. Let's get into some of the technical stuff. I did have somebody highlight my name just before. Oh, yeah, no, that was Jim. Thanks, Jim. So no, I haven't. So what I'm doing here, so this is a 6x14 little piece here. I'm working it out right now. So what you're seeing me do right now on this little board that we'll block in a couple of hours here, and we'll get pretty far along. You know, by the way, painting small like this in the studio, this really helped me with my plein air technique. So this is something that I've done quite a bit of. And when I get outside and paint in plein air, a few of the strategies that I've learned while working here in the studio, I'm able to translate to working out in the field when it's a little bit more of a pressure gig and you've got to go, you know what I mean? You got to move. So what I'm loving about this little scene is just the drama of these rocks. You can see there in that photographic reference just how sharp and jagged some of these shapes are. And I'm thinking about my lines and shapes. And you notice here that I'm not actually sketching up with a pencil or charcoal. There's no lines on that canvas first. I'm really just roughly sketching it in, but already I'm sure you can see what I'm thinking. I'm literally just drawing it up there with a pencil, a paintbrush. Now, I've got an eraser here for a little more precision. I've just got a little bit of liquid original on the end of my brush. And if I need to move a line, I decided to move that rock, then I can just adjust it like so. One thing I'm looking for, though, in this initial stage is I'm looking for line and shape. I'm looking for interesting lines that will lead the eye, and I'm looking for interesting shapes. And so that's the first place that I start thinking about my compositions, is what would make an interesting arrangement here. And so line and shape is always our first consideration. Now, then, as I start to flesh this out, we'll talk a little more about this. We talk about this a bunch on the Academy, which is what is our hierarchy? What is our checklist? What are those things that we're considering as we're creating our pictures? Because there's a lot of things here to consider. So one of the things I wanted to do was combine this image here with my waves that you can see there. I don't need huge crashing waves, but I do want a little bit of that energy to be brought into this scene. So I'll bring one of these breakers and we'll go ahead and break up that line and the base here. We'll have another one kind of rolling in. And I know I'm neglecting you in the live chat, but I will go ahead and turn my head to face that screen here in a second. I just want to get my composition sketched in. So Michael Douglas has got a great question here, glazing for distance or atmospheric effect. So yes, you can glaze, but we're also going to talk about how to create that misty atmospheric effect in one pass with our direct painting techniques. So we're also going to talk about that. So I love these trails that water makes as it's drawing away here. And one thing I loved about this day in particular, you know, photographing some of these rocks, is just that misty, hazy quality of the sky. So a couple of little lines in there, but not much. It was really just a hazy sky. That will bring all of the attention down here into the water. There's one last thing that I want to plan out, which is a light effect where we're going to have a bit of a burnout of the light. So the sun's going to be directly here shining down. So when I say directly, it's going to be off the painting maybe about 3 or 4 inches. But the effect of the sun is going to be reflecting off that wet sand there in the foreground. I think that would be pretty cool. Yeah. All right. So can you paint straight on the plyboard? Mark, you'll have to prepare your board. You will have to prepare your board. Now I'm using oil paint, right? And I'll tell you about the colors that I'm using too. If you want to get a notebook out and jot these down, I'll tell you exactly what's on my palette. This is what I use for portrait, still life, landscape, seascape, you name it. This is pretty much what I use. A few extra colors here. It's a little bit of an extended palette. I was using this yesterday for my sunset demo. I was glad to have, rainbow demo. I was glad to have all of those colors there for the rainbow, let me tell you. But with your oil paint, you really want to make sure that you prep your board well. And you've got something that's going to be a stable surface to layer that paint on. It's pretty vital that you do that. This is one of the reasons I don't use MDF. I know some artists use that, and you could be okay, you could get away with it if you prep it well, lots and lots of gesso, of course, but it's not something that I like to use because it's just not archival. And so you'll want to give it, if you're going to use plywood would be okay. I prefer to put linen on the plywood and adhere it. I adhere it with a PVA, but if you're going to use plywood, just go ahead and give it a really good sand down, give it a few coats of primer, and then give it a coat of gesso. And so you should be okay with that. I think I've got a composition sketched up. The only thing that I might like to do is give myself a little indication of where my darker tones are going to go. For this, I've got a few brushes here. I'm going to be using, let's get this over here. I'm going to be using a few different kinds of brushes. We'll talk about that. And also, I did mention that I'm also And I'm also going to be trying something a little bit different too today. Throw myself in the deep end. Actually, before I get talking about a whole bunch of different topics, let's stick on topic, shall we? We'll talk about the brushes, and then I'll talk about the paint palette that I'm using today. So here, I've got some bristle daggers. And so you can see the size of the dagger compared with the size of the panel. It's pretty big. So this is a Tisch dagger. It's a 5/8 of an inch, and it is made by Rosemary & Co. And here's another little dagger here. That would be nice for some finer details if we get to that. That's about a 1/4 inch. Then I've also got here some short flats. These are Series 274, also Rosemary & Co. And also we've got a series, Series 274. That's a number 8 and a number 6. And this one here is a 1/2 inch angular, Series 275. So these are all kind of various fibers. So the Series 274s and 275s, these are nice and soft, whereas the bristle is a little bit stiffer. But this will help me create my shadows and keep the paint passages relatively thin. This will help me carry a lot of paint, the daggers. And also, just to give you a kind of an idea of their shape and size, if that's easier to see over there on the palette, you can see that. Just 1 second, I just need to run something past my tech guy. All right, I should be back. I'm back. Okay, sorry about that. Absolutely, Roxanne. Roxanne's asking, will I provide the photo reference for my Academy members to use? Yes, of course. My Academy members always get the reference material. Royalty and copyright-free reference material. If you want to paint this, man, we got a huge library of reference over there, so check it out. Anyway, link is in the description below if you want to check that out. Let's go ahead and start mixing up some of this color. And if you were at the last live stream that I did, and you've seen some of my other tutorials, you might recognize this arrangement. By the way, I was sketching up this scene with a combination of burnt umber and permanent crimson. But let's start over here. We got burnt umber, transparent red oxide. You're writing this down. Here we go. You might have to rewind and replay this. Transparent yellow oxide, titanium white, and Kremnitz white. That's a lead white there. I've got cadmium lemon. I've got Hansa yellow, Indian yellow, cadmium red light. I've got permanent crimson, quinacridone magenta, ultramarine blue, cobalt teal, and phthalo green. And over here, I've got this little gelatinous lump. That is liquid impasto medium. And if I zoom out, you can see my hand's going to be going off the screen here. That right there, that is liquid original. Some people ask me, why do you have tape on the thing for it? That's so I know where my video frame is. So I need to make sure I crop it so you don't see that tape. But you just saw it. There you go. Yeah, I do. I do, Jim Meeker, I do. Lead white, best white, says Jim Meeker. Absolutely, absolutely. Would you need to treat the back of your plywood if you want it to be archival? Yes, so Lynn, I prime and paint thoroughly the back of the panel. You want to see that real quick? So it's not just bare wood, you see. It's this one has been treated with a product called Zinzur to seal it, and then that's basically just been heavily shellacked with coats and coats of Rust-Oleum spray paint, a filling spray paint, but it's a heavily primed first. So that's absolutely impervious to moisture now. And yeah, they're beautiful little panels to work on. They're some of my favorites. So I make my own panels generally. I will paint on, you know, pre-made panels, but I love making my own panels and supports. It kind of connects me to the painting a little bit more. So a great place to start when we're starting our painting, a great place to start is with a neutral gray, and then from there we introduce a little bit of color. Now, normally I'll go ultramarine blue. I hit the cobalt blue there though. Normally I'll go ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and white. That'll make a nice neutral gray. The ultramarine blue and burnt umber neutralize one another. So the warmth in that umber and the cool of the ultramarine, those two things go to work. They bring each other into this neutral tone, and then I lift that value out with a little bit of Cremnitz white and a little bit of titanium white. Now from here I get to make a decision based on what I'm seeing in my reference material. Where does that color need to go? So this is when I start my shifting and my mixing. Well, it needs to be a little more blue. That sky close to the horizon there, I'm seeing a little more blue come through. I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of cobalt blue, maybe a little bit of teal. Now I love the teal. It's nice and opaque. It's got a green nature to it, but I use that teal in conjunction with quinacridone magenta. This very pungent color is the quinacridone, but I love a little bit of violet in my skies. So you can see here there's a nice little delicate balance there with that magenta coming through. And so let's put a little bit of this down and see how we go. Now the good thing about using a big brush is we're going to be, and on a small painting, mind you, we're going to be covering some distance. So this allows us to create bigger, looser, bolder brushwork. Using a bristle brush carries a little more paint, but I'm also mixing up quite a volume of paint here. Now between strokes, generally I'll reload that brush. And this will also help me create a little bit more cleaner mark making. So already, just two or three brush strokes there, we've got a section of sky here just close to the horizon. I'm going to work back into that wet paint, but first, let's just mix up a little bit more of that blue. I'll show you another color combination for skies close to the horizon. Again, if you've got a question, I'm here to answer your questions, of course. That's what we're here to do, right? So if you've got a question, go ahead and hit me up in that live chat with 3 capital Qs if you're just tuning in now. If you've never seen me paint before, if you have no idea, you just click this video at random because you're like, ooh, waves, and you clicked on that thumbnail, then let me know. Let me know if you're new and you've never seen me before and where are you tuning in from. Over on the Academy, when we have newbies sign up, which we have all the time, I get them to type in 3 capital N's for new. But let me shout you out and tell me where you're from and where you're tuning in from. And welcome. All my OGs know what to do. I've got people here that have been following for years. It's awesome. I love my OGs. Don't know what an OG is? You're probably not an OG. It's all good. Nathan's got a question here. Just got my studio track lighting. Got adjustable 2700 to 6000 CRI 90 plus. Pretty good, Nathan. Pretty good. Do you recommend lighting the painting area with 1 light set on 3000 and 1 light set on 5000? No, if they're adjustable, I would just go straight 5000 on all of them. I'd go 5000 on all of them. You're probably referring to an older studio video that I did, and I will be making another update because I'm coming to you from another studio. I've really struggled with my studio lighting, Nathan, and one of the things that I struggled with was the CRI. So I'm painting under a really nice temperature, which is 5,000 Kelvin, but the CRI of my LED bulbs is so low that it actually hurts your eyes after a while. You're just not getting a full color spectrum. And so this is something that I've struggled with. So that CRI, or color rendering index, that's actually a really important number to focus on. If your CRI is so low, you're not getting full color. You're actually getting, if it's LED, you're actually getting a huge blue spike in your lights. And that can really lead to some eye strain, and you just don't get full color reflecting off your painting. And I've really struggled with that over the years. So now that I've dawned on this, and I've had a few of my students, help me out with this stuff. I'm no techie, you see. So I manage, but I'm no techie. So I've now made the switch. So I've got right here on one side, the light shining in is a big softbox dome, and it's a 97, 98 CRI. So it's nearly full color, and it's just wonderful. The color explodes off the painting here in studio. So great question, great question. Hello from Westman Islands. What dictates whether you mix the lead and the titanium together or keep them separate? Ollie, that's a great question. So I'm using the lead white for one of its wonderful characteristics, which is the transparency and delicacy. Lead white is transparent, but it's also very archival. It's one of the most archival pigments that you can use. Titanium, allegedly, it has a tendency to darken, but also it's very opaque. So by mixing them together, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the opacity of the titanium, the transparency of the lead, but one thing that I love about using lead white is you kind of have to use a bit of it to create any sense of volume. And I really want to paint with the material. I want to push material and so have some real thickness to that paint. And so one thing that helps me do that and create that volume without affecting my tonal range too much is using a lot of lead. Now, yes, it's real lead. Yes, it's toxic. So a little bit of studio practice here, you know, goes a long way. It's important that we observe some good painting practices. But if you keep it off of you, you don't get it on you. Don't chew on the ends of your brushes, certainly not the business end of your brush, right? Then it can be a wonderful pigment to use. I'm just going to go ahead and, I've got a neutral color here, but I'm going to go ahead and block in this sky. And then I'm going to work in some lighter color a little bit later in the process. Now, when I'm in the studio, what I like to do is I like to work with the far away passages in the painting first, and then work my way forward. What's the furthest thing away in a landscape? Well, normally it's the sky. Now, some people put in their dark values first, or their light values first. I mean, it's okay, whatever your method is, but the reason that I prefer doing my skies first is that the sky really sets the stage in terms of the overall color arrangement and the dynamic happening here in the painting. The sky is what is going to be our main color notes that are going to be hit throughout the rest of this scene. What do I mean by that? Well, whatever colors we mixed up to create this sky, and it's a very subdued sky. Look at the reference material. It's very soft, right? There's not a lot going on in that sky, but that's kind of nice. It's going to mean that we're going to focus more on the rocks and the waves. So whatever's happening up here in terms of a color note, that note is going to be repeated, almost like a baseline rhythm in our shadows, in our rock highlights, in the water, in the waves, in the foreground sand. So a little bit of ultramarine is going to be in there, a little bit of cobalt blue, cobalt teal, a little bit of quinacridone magenta. I'll be using these colors in these different combinations, and it starts to tie together. This is one way to achieve color harmony, I found, is to work with that distance first, start with those few simple base notes, and then start adding a little bit of complication to it. So you add a little bit of cadmium here, and then you add a little bit of permanent crimson, and then you add a little bit of phthalo green. And as you start to flesh out the composition, as long as that baseline's there, you've got coordination. But there is something else for that coordination, and that's the underlying imprimatura, you see. So that underlying burnt umber, burnt sienna, that's showing through those gaps in the brushwork, and it's allowing this warmth to go ahead and come on through. All right, so we've got a little bit of a base here. I've got that neutral tone all up in my brush. And let me just check. I feel like I'm a little bit out of focus here. No, pretty good. I'm pretty good. A little bit out of focus. I'm going to mix up a little bit of color here, and I want to add a bit of lightness here. It might help to go ahead and change my brushes. So far I've just been using one brush, and now I'm about to get out my second brush. And a little bit of transparent yellow oxide, a little bit of transparent red oxide. Make a nice lighter orangey color. It's very subtle. It's just a warm white that I've mixed up. It's a bit difficult to see on the camera. What if I did this? Can you see that a little bit better? And so just a touch of lightness. I want to mix up a little bit of this, put this close to the horizon just to lift it out a little bit so we don't get too heavy down in here. Now, in order to paint with that wet and wet or alla prima, have those brushwork, that brushwork be effective, you got to continually reload that brush. But just lifting it out a little bit, I think, would help a lot. I'm just going to go ahead and paint across because we'll go ahead and reestablish some of those lines with our rocks in our next pass. create one of those lighter stripes coming through. Just a little bit of interest in the sky, a little bit lighter down here and a little bit heavier at the top will help a bit of a sense of depth come through. Now, let's go ahead. I'm going to be using exactly the same colors, but let's go ahead and just switch up our view here. And I'm going to just, if you don't mind, just get these off the screen so we can see this a little bit better. And you fella can just hide in the corner a little more. There we go. Let me just make sure that I'm focused here. And we'll kick up the shutter speed so we can see what's going on. Cool. Thank you, Gigi. I'm new to the channel. Have you ever used a harmonic armature? No. I'm thinking about giving it a shot. Seems to be complicated. I've never heard of that, Anstronaut. Love the profile name, by the way. Do you ever get annoyed with the sketch, with that sketch color mixing in? Ah, brilliant question, Windows to Heaven Art. I really love that question. There's a reason that I use this, and I've already started to blend that color ever so slightly, but you gotta keep it thin. You gotta keep your initial sketch up nice and thin. So I'm not using a lot of paint at all. I'm gonna introduce just one more color here. Let me just mix this for you on screen, and then I'll get my palette out the way. One more color I'm gonna use here. I'm gonna use a bit of cobalt blue, but just start sneaking in a hint of that phthalo green, just the smallest amount. Remember, phthalo green, it's a bully. It's gonna go around knocking the crap out of all your other colors if you're not careful. So just a touch, and I'm gonna increase that green as I come forward to get some of that bottle green nature. But let's go ahead and start mixing in here and putting in our distant sea. Man, I love using a big brush for some of these paintings. So that color, yeah, it will mix in, but it's so thin that just a little bit's mixing in, but it's permanent crimson and burnt umber, and the deal is that that will add just a little bit of warmth and a little bit of richness. It actually works beautifully with these colors. And remember, there's burnt umber in this mix that I'm putting down now. There's actually burnt umber in these combinations. That's how we mixed some of this sky blue. All right, so as I come forward, I'm just going to start adding in the indication of some of these waves. Again, so this is the lighter color that I had on my brush previously. Some of that white coming through. And so if I mix in a little bit of teal and a little bit of magenta, that will make me a really nice blue for some of the shadows on some of these waves. Now the reason I'm doing this little painting here is because I'm really thinking hard about doing some bigger seascape works. And so I gotta produce a few studies, right? I like to really paint those bigger, larger works that you might know me for if you've been following on social media or looking at my YouTube channel. You know, those big things like the big red Kimberley Canyon, you know, that the Kimberleys out there in Western Australia, epic landscape. Or Milford Sound, you know, things like that. You don't just start painting and that thing happens. You've got to do a lot of planning and prep. So what you're seeing here is my planning and prep. So I think this painting will hopefully turn out okay, but I'm really going to know as soon as I've done it. And the beauty of doing just a small one is that there's not much time invested in it compared to spending a year on a big painting only to find out, oh goodness, that didn't turn out very good, did it? Now I've got a wave coming through here. I just need to think this through and plan this out. I've got actually the opportunity for a couple of breaking waves here, which would be really nice. I've got one here curling over. But I really want to think about what the hero of the painting is, and I think it's going to be a green glow right here in that little square shape. So I don't want to have too much of a good thing. I want to just kind of play it down in some of these other areas, and we'll have that green glow just in one area. You can see a little bit more of that cobalt teal coming through and phthalo green in the top of that wave. Now, one thing that's important, you remember this from the last live stream if you were watching that it's important to save your tonal best for last. Here, there's a very subtle light effect, which is this silvery shimmer that's across the surface, the lead edge of these waves, across that sand that's in the foreground. This silvery shimmer, it's a delicate light effect. If I go too far, too quick with my tones, I'm not going to get that effect. So I need to hold back. And this is why I keep saying to myself, save my tonal best for last. What the heck is my tonal best? What does that even mean? Well, the highest that I can go on the value scale is pure titanium white. That is the most reflective, brilliant white paint. And so if I have that at the top of the value scale, if I use that too quickly, I've already killed it. Right out of the gates, I've killed my lighting effect. So what I'm actually doing is creating a series, as you can see here on the palette, a series of soft grays. And so this is so far from that pure white that you see right there. Okay, I'm sure we got some more questions. Techno Dad's here. Hey, Techno Dad, what's up? Oh, hey, Rick. So your name's Rick. Awesome. That's good. Looking to paint a forest with a tree stump and with a new sapling growing out of it. Best place for references, any in the Academy. There will be references in the Academy. Maybe check the community section there, because a lot of our members, Rick, upload reference to the community section as well. Amazing community over there, right? It's pretty cool. All right. What type of landscape is your favorite to paint? Also, what light? Oh, Jara, great question. Look, I'm so partial to seascapes, but I guess my favorite landscape to paint is whatever I've got on the easel at the moment. So today it's seascapes. Is that a cop-out answer? No. Look, I'm interested in it all, man. I want to paint it all. I paint portraits, I paint landscapes, I paint still lifes, I paint seascapes, I paint all sorts of things. The only thing I won't do is paint you an abstract, and because I don't care, and I'm not about to be taping bananas to walls, okay? So if it's real art and we're painting realistic in oils, I know I'm probably triggering a few people, but hey, that's just my point of view. That's my opinion, okay? I'm not about to get contemporary on you. I love old masters, and I love traditional realism, and that's my jam. We all got to have our thing, right? I guess that's just my thing. But what I'm here to do, that's kind of opened up an interesting idea there, Jara, and I appreciate that. What I'm here to do is really explore the world, the visual world, and try and recreate what I see in nature on canvas. And I want to create not just a painting, but I want to create an experience. I want my viewer to experience nature through the canvas. Yes, don't get me wrong. Take a walk outside once in a while, will you? Don't just look at my paintings. That's not what I'm saying. But I want people to stop by and look at it. And if they can see the original in the gallery, you know, great. But I want people to stand in front of the painting and go, wow, that feels like a real wave. Wow, those rocks feel, you know, solid and sharp and jagged, and they're catching and reflecting that light just so. All right. No Vegemite art. There will be no. I'll paint some Vegemite, but I'm not going to paint with Vegemite, Mr. Meeker. Have you ever done a seascape? I have, David L. And I'm going to be doing another one. As soon as I can. I'm actually going to be painting Florence and Venice, and does that count? And there's some cute little street scenes from Siena. So does that count as a cityscape? Old buildings, cool buildings. I might even do some urban plein air work down in Dunedin, which is my closest city. And so set up my easel on the street and paint some of the cool old buildings. I like old buildings. I like old paintings, I like old buildings. All right, let's mix up some of this green color and start bringing our wave forward, shall we? Let's do it, let's do it. Okay, let me go back to this angle. Let's get some reference back in there so you can see where we're at. And Where did you have your training? Did you go to art school? El Meester, great question. I say that I'm self-taught, but are we ever really self-taught? But I guess in a manner of speaking, I'm self-taught. I picked a lot of this stuff up by just doing it. I've been pretty relentless over the last 20 years, and before that, before I went pro, at just working on my skills, working on my methodology, and just getting as good as I possibly could. You know, I think we all have a certain capacity and a certain potential, and one thing I wanted to do was just maximize that potential. So I just started studying, I started looking at books, I started going to art museums. Where I was at the time in Perth, Western Australia, there was not a whole lot going on in terms of master artists that you could study with. If you're in the US, good night. You can actually study with amazing people. You know, I've spoken to several artists on the podcast who studied with amazing artists like Jeff Hine. By the way, Jeff Hine podcast is going to drop today. I interviewed Jeff Hine. But he was teaching workshops and almost like an atelier system over there in Utah. So I just didn't have that coming up. I didn't have that, and I wish I did. So I kind of had to make it work on my own. And that's okay. It just took longer. But there's also academies and atelier like over there in Florence. You got the Florence Academy, Angel Academy. You got Watts Atelier over there in the U.S. as well. Like there's some really great art schools. Michael Klein's got something going on. So there's some really great art schools that you can go to and learn from some amazing, talented artists. By the way, I was just mixing in there. I've been adjusting my cobalt teal and my phthalo green there, just adding just little sneaky amounts. All right. So I've been adding a little bit more teal and a little bit more phthalo green. I haven't added any light to this wave. It's still pretty muted, pretty subdued. I'm just flicking the brush end on, but I'm forcing myself to use this bigger brush just to make some bolder marks, if you see. Okay, so I'm going to bring some of that white water forward here. Go back to my previous photo. So I'm really combining these two, as you can see down there in that reference material. The image on the left is just way too flat, right? Oh, by the way, so just to finish that up about the art school and training, I studied. I did get a degree in fine art, and I studied at a tertiary institution in Western Australia. And no, I would not recommend it. It was academic. I don't mention where I studied. Some people know, it doesn't really matter. But it was an epic waste of time. And the reason it was a waste of time is because it taught nothing but concept, and it taught nothing but kind of ideas, and I just didn't vibe with that. I wanted to know the material, I wanted to know how to paint, I wanted to know technique, and I didn't want to have somebody tell me that what I had to say didn't matter and wasn't valid. Oh, that's been done before, Andrew. So, you know, painting's dead, and what you need to do is tear your paint in half and talk about your feelings. I'm like, well, I don't want to tear my painting in half and pour ketchup on it and talk about my feelings. I want to paint cows and gum trees. That's what I want to paint. I want to paint waves. I want to paint landscapes. So, and who is anybody to tell you that that's not okay? So I had enough of it, and I got my degree, and I left, and it took me 2 years to recover from that experience. But once I got out the other side of that, I was like, far out. It's okay to paint landscapes. Anyway, as you can hear, I'm not bitter about it at all. But if you can train with a master artist, then that is the way to go. But that is precisely why, I tell you what, great questions today, by the way. I'm just going to take a quick minute, but I want to explain that this is precisely why I started this thing. So allow just a brief interruption. This is why I started Tisch Academy, because I didn't want people to have to go through what I went through. So I have my own online art school that basically will teach you how to paint from the convenience of your own home. There's no lock-in contracts. You can cancel anytime, and you get a free 7-day trial when you join and you click that link in the description down below. It also, I want to make this absolutely painless for you. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you cancel anytime within the first month, you won't be charged. But when you have a look at the Academy VIP price and the studio price, and I'll explain the difference between those two tiers. When you have a look at those two different tiers, you know, and think about how expensive art school is. And what I was just saying, some of them really suck. But think about getting quality training in art and oil paint so you can create the works that you really want to create for as little as 25 bucks a month. Or the studio tier is 15 bucks a month. So what's the difference? What do I have for you? Well, I've got right now, I say hundreds of hours of content there, but we worked it out the other day. There's over 300 hours of video content in the library right now. That is full painting demonstrations on a wide range of subjects, from portraits to landscapes to still lifes, you name it, we paint it. And so there's a breakdown of the process. If you're new to painting, if you're a beginner and you really want to build your skills and you want to really explore this thing, if you're ready to just unleash and get creative, then I highly recommend taking our Fundamentals of Oil Painting course. That'll teach you the basics, run you through all the material, and give you a series of exercises and challenges so one skill will build on the next. So not only do we have feature-length painting demonstrations, I also do critique videos. This is where I take your painting in video form, break it down, talk about composition, the do's and don'ts of composition. We talk about the arrangement. And so I'm taking at random, basically, from our members over there on the Academy, different paintings to critique and use those as an example. I don't critique everyone's paintings, but of all the paintings that I am critiquing, I'm taking those from our members. And there's a huge library right now of critique videos that you can get stuck into and learn everything there is to know about composition. Well, from my point of view anyway. All right, we also have an art business course. We're uploading modules to that now, and we are basically, if you want to go pro, if you want to learn how to make this work as a business, that's what that's for. It's pretty cool. The best part is the exclusive community. And the exclusive community, we interact and we get together every single week on the weekly live streams. And some of these live streams go for up to 5 hours where I'm painting and answering your questions here live in the studio. Yes, you heard that right, 5-hour live streams. I might even start doing some that go for even longer. So if you want to take your art a little bit further, if you want to start painting some work that you're really proud of, then please do yourself a huge favor. Click that link down below. Get yourself a free 7-day trial. You literally have nothing to lose. I'm giving this to you for free for 7 days to try it out. But I feel so, and the reason I do that, I'm so confident that you're going to love this, that you'll stick around and you'll want to hang out with us in the community. And it is an awesome community of people. So the live streams, by the way, that's available to the Academy tier. So if you want access to the live streams, that's where you got to sign up at that Academy tier. So go ahead and click the link in the description. Join Tisch Academy today. Start painting some stuff that's really cool, that you're really proud of. Get that information in your hands right now. Okay, thank you very much for allowing that little introduction. We will go back to our little wave painting and start fleshing this out a little bit more. So I've been bringing these waves forward. You can see how I've been working that brush. You can start to discern a little bit of structure there to that wave. I'm going to go ahead and park those waves there for now. We'll do some more here in the live stream in just a second. But it's time to turn attention over there to those rocks. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, we're going to need to mix up some color for those rocks. So you can see here in our reference material, there's some pretty dark values. Pretty dark values. Now, I'm saving my tonal best for last. That not only goes for our light values, but it also goes for our dark values as well. Oh, by the way, just on the Academy, I've got a whole bunch of Academy members here. A shout out to all my Academy members. I've got a whole bunch of Academy members here in the live chat. I didn't pay them to say what they're saying right now in the live chat, and I haven't even monitored what they're saying, but have a look at Irene Pellegrino's comment, Virginia Haynes' comment, Ash Kennedy, Balsam Art, you know, people like Lori as well. Lori, shout out to Lori, love you. And Jim Meeker as well. And hey, Lynn's here, Tamara's here. There's so many people here from the Academy. So just have a listen there to some of the stuff that they're saying. Some of these folks have been with us on Tisch Academy and part of this awesome community for the last, gosh. Well, Lori, I think you've been here nearly 5 years, haven't you? I mean, from the beginning, when I first started Patreon, so that's going back a ways. That's going back a ways. So, and I'm just so blessed to have such wonderful people there in the Academy. But, you know, it's working for some people. So have a read of some of those comments. I just wanted to shout out all my wonderful members there. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, so tonal best. So it not only goes for the lightest lights, it also goes for the darkest darks. We're going to put in some darker tone there, but I'm not going to start there. I'm going to work back in the same fashion from whatever's distant to whatever's going forward. Now, Mark had an interesting point earlier about, do we glaze for that depth? Yes and no. I will add some glazes to this in a future sitting. We're going to get everything down first. But I'm going to do is the best I can mixing that value and mixing that color. So I've got to think about this in terms of value first, then color. By the way, I started off this demonstration, I was talking to you about a checklist, right? So we have line and shape. The next consideration, that's the underlying drawing. We've done that, right? The next consideration was tone, your value. Tone is king. That the value reigns over everything else in the painting. If you get your tones right, you can be a little bit off with your color. The painting will still hold together. If you can't draw, then, you know, well, you need to work on that, right? Don't worry, we talk about drawing too. There's lots of pencil stuff there on the Tisch Academy. Okay, anyway, get off that one. All right, so once we have our line and shape, then the next consideration is our tone, so value, and then color. That's why I started off with the burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and white mix, and then I started adding to that color once I hit the right tone for the sky, right? And when I say tone, I mean value. When I say value, I mean tone. I use those two words interchangeably. I prefer tone. I just like tone. I don't know. It's just me, just me. Okay, so speaking of which, I got a different brush here that I'm going to be using. I got a flat series 274, and I've got this in a size 6 and a size 8, and I've got a series 275, a little angular jobby right there. That's going to help me create a bit more sharpness. Let's get over here to the palette and mix in just a little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of cobalt blue, and a little bit of ultramarine blue. Already, that's going to mix a really dark tone, really dark value. Let me adjust now the camera here so you can make out a little bit more of that, some of that darker tone to compare. Now, there'd just be just a hint of some of these other colors in. If I just tap the brush in some of that sky color that we used before, as long as it's darker than that surrounding sky, I should be okay. It should come forward. Context is everything. That is really dark. But over here, it looks relatively light. So let's go ahead, lighten it up just a little bit, and try that. So the idea is if I make this lighter, then I'm going to create a point of difference between this rock and this rock, as long as this one's a little bit lighter in tone. And one thing I want to do is towards the base of this rock, I want to have it lighter still to give an indication of a faint amount of sea spray amongst some of those waves, just at the top of some of those waves. So let's go ahead and get that out of there, give you a little bit of a closer look. Thank you, Alexandra. That's a really nice thing to say. I appreciate that so much. Appreciate it. Awesome. Oh, bless you guys. All right, so let's go ahead and add in a little bit more. Again, if you got a question, I'm here to answer your questions. So 3 capital Qs in front of your question. And if you've asked it and I haven't answered it, hit me up again. I might just see it. I am monitoring this screen and the live chat while I'm painting. So talk about juggling over here. But go ahead and hit me up in that live chat and I'll do my best to answer your question. I'm going to be working over that sky a little bit. This means I'm going to be dragging in a bit of that sky color into my rocks, but I just go ahead and reload my brush each time. I'm going to treat this rock more or less like a flat shape right now. Get a little bit of that character that we see. I love the forked top to this rock, or that little depression in the top. So I'm going to cut into the sky. This angular 275 create some nice sharp edges. I don't want it too sharp, so as I drag that brush across, I just feather the edge ever so slightly to just achieve just the right amount of sharpness. Want a nice shape to be silhouetted and contrast it against that sea and against that distant sky. Now once again, so this doesn't look like too much of a flat, boring shape. I'm going to grab a little bit of this sky color here that's over on the palette, and I'm just going to draw along the bottom here of that, and we just haze that out a little bit more. So this is just some of those colors that I was using in the waves and in the sky. Just a little bit of a misty effect. We can even indicate some planes to this rock if it's getting a little too flat and boring. I think it might be. Let's go ahead and get some planes in there. Just holding that chisel edge of that brush, drag through that wet paint, get some of those planes on the rock, reflecting a little bit of that sky color. These rocks are constantly getting doused by these crashing waves. So of course, as they become wet, they reflect all sorts of light from different directions, but that sky is going to be a dominant reflection there. So just a couple of angles here and there, I think, would be a nice touch. Okay, we'll carry on with the rocks to that side. And again, you can't see the palette right now. I'll switch the camera over in just a second, but we're going to mix up a little bit of burnt umber here, and I've got a little bit more ultramarine blue. I'm going to go back to the original tone that we were painting before, the original value, and we'll start working the top edge of this rock. And working into that sky again. So Jim wants to know, he says, you're probably not going to finish this in the live stream, but will you finish this for the Academy? Yes, I will be doing this for the Academy. I'm actually doing, Jim, a few different versions of this type of scene. So you might notice, hey, this is kind of similar to your last live stream that you did here on YouTube, and you'd be right, it is. I actually have a whole bunch of reference images that I shot this one day where the light was just doing something spectacular. It's like this soft, beautiful, subdued sky. It was extraordinary. It's like nothing I've seen, and this silver quality to the light. I'm like, far out. It's like I'm looking at a seascape in a dream. It's just weird, dude. So I had to go ahead and photograph this. I've been sitting on this reference for years. And so I'm coming up with several variations of this theme. And what I'm going to be doing is choosing my favorite one and blowing it up and making a monster of a painting out of it. And that I will be sharing with my Academy, but I'm also going to be sharing the end of the process of this with the Academy. So you're right, I won't be finishing this painting in this sitting, but I will be blocking in the whole thing, and we're going to get really far along. I'm just going to probably do this one in 2 sittings. The first sitting is going to be a couple of hours. The last sitting is probably going to be a couple of hours, and I'll share that with my folks over there on the Academy. So, yes, to answer your question, I hope that answers it, Jim. Thank you very much, sir. I know Mr. Meeker likes his seascapes. He particularly likes putting those tall ships in those seascapes. So. That is insanely cool. I think maybe this could use a ship. No? Maybe something out there on the horizon. Many ships ran aground on this coast. I got a question here from Laura. When are you painting one of your large epic paintings? Do you pre-mix your colors? Any recommendations on how to do that? So my approach is I don't actually pre-mix. When you see my palette, Laura, I actually do this. I have an arrangement of colors that is organized in chromatic order, and I hit the note. And what I'm doing is I'm approaching color in very much I guess you could say almost a scientific manner, right? Everything, I start off with an idea, I have a direction that I'm going, and I start off with some sort of method that I'm following, and I just make adjustments to that method. So here I'm continually going for a neutral gray, and then adjusting that gray by introducing higher key, higher chroma colors. Everything to the left of my white are my earth tones, and everything to the right of the white are my high chroma colors that normally I have a couple of yellows, couple of reds, couple of blues, and a green or two. For the most part, it's just phthalo green. I can mix so many different greens that are harmonious with this arrangement, with the blues and the yellows, of course. So that's my approach to color. I rarely pre-mix, but I know there's a lot of wonderful artists out there that do pre-mix their colors, and they'll even go as far as to put them in paint tubes. They'll pre-mix a whole series of things like, you know, sky colors, rock colors, shadow colors, all sorts of things, and put them in paint tubes. And so if you have a note that you're hitting continually, well, it might make sense to have that there pre-mixed. It could work. So it's not a bad way of going. It's just not my preferred method of working. And when I teach, I try to give my students a system for being able to think about color that puts you in control. Like, how do you match that color? What the heck is going on there? How do we approach this problem, this visual problem? So that's kind of my approach to things. So I've got a rock there. We could push that a little bit further. We do need to introduce a little bit of light to the scene, but the next place I'm going to move is to the next tier of depth and the next rock in front. Now, we've lost a little bit of that tone there. In this reference image, you can see that there's just a bit of separation between those two rocks. It really is evident in the shadows, but there's a slight temperature difference between the lead edge of this rock and the other one. So it's not necessarily a tonal difference, but it is a color difference, a temperature difference. So let's go ahead and add that by mixing in a little bit of transparent red oxide into our rock color. And by the way, have some of this handy while you're painting. So I'm about to change my color here. I don't want to get it too contaminated. I've got pretty loaded brush here, and I want to mix clean color. So I put that in those paper towels, wipe off, I'm good to go. I wipe off that brush, and that is a clean brush ready to go. And so what you don't see is in my left hand, I've got this thing here ready to go. All right. So I'm going to mix up a touch of, and I just realized I don't have the palette cam on, but it's okay. I'll just explain what I'm doing. Transparent yellow oxide, transparent red oxide in a little bit of that previous rocky color. Now, red does not travel well through distance, and here the depth is really accentuated over a short distance because of the amount of mist and haze that's in the air. So anything red is going to come a little bit further forward, and I got some really nice red surfaces to some of these rocks. I'm going to redefine the top edge of that rock right there. So I have to reload my brush. I'm going to have a little bit of a step there. I love that notch that's cut right there in that rock. That's cool. While I got this on my brush, maybe just a couple of notes up in here, just a little bit of color. We'll define some of that in a second. In fact, this series 274 flat, that will actually work really nice for some of the top edge of some of those rocks. Bit of Krimnitz white, bit more burnt umber, bit more transparent red oxide, a little bit of blue. Again, I'm going for that subtle light effect, and I'm going for a highlight color. What? Yeah, that is a very subdued gray, but again, if I'm saving my tonal best for last and I'm thinking about the structure of this rock, I don't want to go too far with my brighter tones. And by the way, if I ever dip in front of the camera like that, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to keep out of the camera's way so you can see what I'm doing. But just a few marks here. Defining some of these planes. I actually think, I don't know, maybe I'm calling it too soon. You let me know what you think in the comments. I'm not fishing. You might think this painting sucks, but I think that this will make a really nice big painting. So I am looking forward to painting it a little bit bigger. So here, I've added just a touch of blue to my mix. And one thing I love about these wet rocks is how they reflect that sky color. So a little bit of ultramarine blue coming through there. There's some really nice structure to these rocks. So I'm just using the chisel end of that brush to mimic some of these shapes and forms. And I think while we're going, we can go ahead actually and get out some of that dark color as well. Again, if you've got a question, hit me up with 3 capital Qs. Now, unfortunately, I think it's in Korean, so I can't read your name, but I just want to shout you out there. The comment is, interesting to watch your video live and your painting. Tried some of your painting, but it was difficult to paint the wave. Your painting is so much awesome. Hey, thank you, thank you. Waves can be a little bit tricky, but again, with methodology, you can get there. It's really about just following a bit of a system here and a bit of a process. So down here, I've got the same color that was on my brush for the waves and a bit of that sky color as well. There's a touch of green coming through. Anytime you get too much green, a bit of quinacridone magenta can just help bring things into balance there. But I'll go ahead and just add to the surface of this rock, and it might seem like a random assortment of marks, but when you look at the reference and follow along with what I'm doing here, I'm sure you'll see. So you can see there that little reflection of sky off the rock. That is an interesting little visual effect, isn't it? So it only is occurring really way down low where that water will be lapping that rock right there. Very cool. While I've got my little angular series 275, I'm going to go ahead and map out where a couple of these rocks can go. I'm not interested in exactly where the rocks go. Like I can shift them around. I am following my reference material as a guide, but I can make some choices about, does the rock need to move left? Does it need to move right? I play a game with my rocks almost like they're chess pieces. I play this game called aesthetic chess. I make one move at a time, and I'm like, yes, that's right, that works, checkmate. But it does take some playing with it. Now here in this phase of the painting, it is more or less kind of random, but I'm thinking about some do's and don'ts of composition and just trying to generally stick to some guidelines. But I'm not too harsh with myself. Hey, Aprendi Arte Comingo, thank you for the super chat. At some point, the oil paint doesn't allow me to keep painting without contaminating colors in the canvas. Do you have a tip for that? Yes, I do. I do. So here in my left hand, I've got a series of brushes, right? And so generally for my areas in the painting, so if I'm painting rocks, I've got a couple of brushes here that are more or less rock brushes, right? If I'm painting the water or the sky, I've got those colors on the brush. And I'm not trying to paint the sky with the rock brush, and I'm not trying to paint the rocks with the sky brush. Now that might sound overly simplistic, but this really matters and it helps you create that clean color. The other thing is over here on the palette, is that notice the mixing area. I've got lots of mixing area, but at no time am I trying to manipulate the color here and trying to affect change across one pile of paint. No, 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 no. I'm working over here with the rocks, and I'm working in just to the edge of some of those other colors. But the rock color really does have its own area here and another area over here. And here's the range of cleaner colors and grays and lighter violets and greens that I can use in my sky and my waves. So if I'm compartmentalizing my mixes over here, and I'm using individual brushes for individual effects over here, and I've got my paper towel handy in my other hand, and I'm wiping off the brush as I go, I can avoid contaminating my color. That's a wonderful question. I really appreciate your super chat. If I didn't answer that sufficiently enough, please do me a huge favor. Ask me for a little bit of clarification there. I'm happy to clarify that. But thank you again for the super chat. Very kind of you. What is a wattage of lights in your softbox diffuser panel? I couldn't tell you the wattage off the top of my head, but I have turned it right down. It's currently on its lowest setting. It's on its lowest setting. Okay. I know you use mostly liquid, Lucinda's asking. How do you feel about 50-50 chestnut oil and turpentine? Oh, I don't like using turpentine for medium. I don't like it. I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is because it kind of breaks those bonds that the oil paint's trying to make as your paint film goes through this process called polymerization. You really want to have a solid bond between pigment particle and the adjoining pigment particle, and whatever you've mixed that paint with. You want to create a substrate that is so Loctite and solid that it's not going to move on you. And one thing about solvent is it breaks apart those things. I mean, that's why you can release paint from the surface of a painting using solvent. You can release paint from your brushes when you clean them using solvent. So it never really made sense to me to use it in the painting. Can you create a great effect? Yes, you can. Yes, you can create great washes and all that stuff. And a lot of professional artists do that with great success. But my question is, how is that going to stand up over time? And so a lot of my process in terms of the archival approach is based on the work of people like Virgil Elliott and also Michael Wilcox. Now, I don't follow everything that they say verbatim, but a few little tips and tricks I picked up that just helped me have a bit of a better understanding of archival painting practice, let's put it that way. Now, for every artist out there, you're going to have a different opinion. You might think I'm wrong on that. That's okay. That's okay. This is just something that I stick to, and it's given me predictable, consistent results. And my paintings have lasted, so far, I've been painting professionally 20 years, and I have a few of the paintings in the studio of when I first started using this process, and they've held up very well. But time will tell, right? We really need like a good couple of 100 years. I don't know if you got that kind of time. I don't think I do. I mean, I try to take pretty good care of myself, but I think I'm going to be pushing it to stick around that long to see how these paintings look in that amount of time. But that's a good question. It's a good question. But I like liquid. I use it within reason, so no more than 1 part liquid to 3 parts paint, and that will give us a really good ratio, a really good working ratio, and it will thin out the paint. We'll get a great, quick, fast, convenient drying time, and it's wonderful stuff. It can be a little bit on the nose, absolutely, but it is really good stuff. Nice and convenient to work with. So that's why I use it. That's why artists like Renato Machillo use it as well. By the way, interview with Renato Machillo, you can listen to right now on the podcast. So on all streaming platforms, search either my name or The Creative Endeavor, and you can listen to that podcast and enjoy. Leaving brushes in oil like walnut oil, is that fine instead of constant cleaning? Rick, I don't know about leaving them in oil. I mean, you can do that. I just want to make sure that you get the oil out totally before you start painting, right? So just make sure you get all that stuff out of your brush before you get back to your next session, just in case you do affect the drying time of your painting. So I got a nice deep shadow here. I'm going to go ahead and just paint it in, but one thing I want to be careful for is that I don't have too much contrast close to the bottom edge of the canvas, or sorry, the side edge of the canvas. And the reason why is I have this one rule that I try not to break called exiting vectors. if a vector exits the frame in an abrupt or harsh way, it can be distracting. It can lead the eye in such a way that draws too much attention. I want to keep attention away from the edge of the painting. So I'm thinking about a clever way that I can soften this harsh line here at the bottom of the rock. But at the same time, I love this shelf of rock that's fallen away in this harsh shadow, and it almost forms this arrowhead that's pointing us back into the composition. I think that's cool. I like that. Neat. So, sorry, and beg your pardon if I've mispronounced that. Just make sure you put a QQQ at the start of your question. Glad I caught that one. So if you got a question, just type in 3 capital Qs or tag me. Find out a way to like highlight my name. There is a way to do that. I don't know. I'm not as I said before, you know, your guy here, he's not a tech guy. But if you go ahead and just highlight my name, that way I'll catch your question. Glad I caught this one. So, can you describe your fat over lean scale? So it's not necessarily fat on lean. I don't observe that rule. I mean, I do if I'm using something that I need to observe that rule, but I don't observe that rule because as long as I have a little bit of liquid in every part of that painting, what's going to happen is I'm going to get good adhesion between my layers. And that's all I'm after is adhesion. I want one layer to stick to the next layer. So 1 part medium to 3 parts paint, and I do that throughout. When you're using alkyd resin like a liquid original, the fat on lean kind of goes out the window. No, you're all good. Don't worry about it. To varnish or not to varnish, RT? Varnish. Definitely varnish. Absolutely. I varnish every painting I do. Now, if I don't have time to put it on a final varnish, like for instance, if it's a commission, if it's going to a client, then I will use something like a retouch varnish. Although now I'm starting to use Gamvar. And you could put Gamvar on a painting when you've been using liquid after a couple of weeks. So that's pretty good. It's totally reversible. I use the satin Gamvar. It's really nice varnish. So Gamvar, wonderful stuff. I have used and do continue to use retouch varnish as well. That's given me pretty good results. And for a final picture varnish, I really love Winsor & Newton varnish. I make a combination of satin and matte so I can control the amount of sheen on the painting. But yes, definitely varnish. One thing about using some of these pigments and painting in this way is that we actually create this effect because some colors, they're hungry for oil, and so we get this sinking in effect. And wherever you get sinking in of the oil into the ground or just the pigment itself, it goes matte, it goes dull, right? So matte is just like a dull surface where the light, when it hits it, it's diffused. So it's not shiny, it's not glossy, it's kind of dull. So we call that matte. But if you have some area where the oil is just sitting on the surface, it might look a little more glossy. And so this will go very patchy in that way, from matte to gloss, if I leave it for a little while to dry. And so one thing the varnish does is it evens out your surface, so that you actually come up with something it's a little easier to look at. Because there's one thing that's really distracting about painting sometimes is you look at this finished painting and it's patchy. But you look at old masters' work in the museums and they're beautiful surfaces. I just geek out on painting surfaces. So that's one of the reasons I started to varnish. Not only does it make good sense and it protects your painting, it just makes it easier to look at. So try Gamvar. Gamvar it's a great product, and Gamvar it's really, yeah, it's wonderful stuff. Now, I didn't mention before, I do get questions all the time about, and by the way, Gamvar aren't a brand that I work with, but a brand I do work with besides Rosemary & Co. Love my Rosemary & Co. But the brand that I do work with is Blue Ridge Oil Colors. So if you go to blueridgeoilpaint.com, that link should be in the description down below. But Blue Ridge, they are based in Asheville, North Carolina. He was recently hit by that big hurricane that came through. So can you please show Eric Silver some love? And if you are going to be buying some oil paint, this is all I use. I use Blue Ridge. There's a big old tube of transparent yellow oxide right there. But that's the brand there, blueridgeoilpaint.com. Eric Silver is the guy who runs Blue Ridge, and this guy's a master craftsman. I just love his colors. I'm addicted to this stuff now. It's all I've been using for the last, gosh, how long have I been using Blue Ridge? It's got to be coming up on 5-6 years now, a long time. But he's just, I just love what he does. That's all I can say. So that's everything you see there is all Blue Ridge. And it's handmade in Asheville, North Carolina. And again, you'll find that link for the Blue Ridge oil paint in that description down below on YouTube. So I'm thinking about the way this rock breaks apart. I like this angular brush. I don't want to get too bogged down in anything that looks like detail, so I'm just going for some of those mass tones there, thinking about that underlying form, and then we can fragment it up further, and we could probably do that in the detail phase. But hopefully you can start to see, and I'm starting to see a little bit of structure there to these rocks. And having some flat chisel edges to these brushes really does help in creating the different planes of the rock. Now, one of the other things that I want to avoid with my paintings, my compositions, is what I call the axis of evil. And the axis of evil is basically my center lines and my diagonal lines. So if I connect up my diagonals, yes, there is a bit of a diagonal trend there, but I don't want to exit that corner. So notice how I've come just shy of that corner. Might be a little bit of a diagonal trend there too, with some of these trails of water here in the foreground. But I like that, but I just don't want to have any line that exits that corner. I want to stay clear of the horizontal midline and the vertical midline. It doesn't mean I can't have the odd rock or something there, just not a major dominant part of the composition going front smack bang in the middle there. Got another question here from Astronaut. Why did you decide to be an artist, and what makes you love painting landscapes above anything else? I don't love painting landscapes above anything else. I love painting everything. But why did I decide to become an artist? There was no, I didn't have a choice. The choice was made for me. You just love what you love, right? And I am a terrible employee. I am the worst employee. When I was younger, I got fired from everybody. I was what you would call a serial firee. Bad attitude, you see, bad attitude. And so, and some jobs, it wasn't that I got fired. I was just invited to never come back. And so I worked out that if I didn't find a way of making it on my own, I would starve to death. So I love painting. I was raised by an artist. My father is a sculptor. So I knew it was possible. And my dad, you know, I hear really awful tales from people that were not as blessed as I was, who had parents, and we love our parents, right? But let's face it, sometimes parents can be very discouraging and can really shatter our dreams by saying, "Oh, Jimmy, get a real job, will you?" You know, it's like, but no, I want to draw comic book characters. So this is the thing, is that a lot of the time it's discouraged in our young folks today, and it's also culturally discouraged because it's not something that you see very often, although I think it's starting to become more and more accepted. You know, I've met some wildly successful people that were artists, that were financially independent, wealthy artists that paint pictures for a living, and they're doing amazing. I'm thinking, far out. And I had the blessing of meeting some of these folks when I was very young. They're going, wow, you can do this. You can make this work. So not only do I love it, I think it's also a fantastic business, and I just love it. I'm addicted to it. So I eat, breathe, sleep this stuff. This is my life. This is my life's work. What I really love, though, I got to say, it's not only being an artist, but it's teaching other people how they can be artists. It's not only teaching painting, but it's teaching the kind of the thought process and philosophy behind the art business, the art world, and creating your own thing. So I love it. I love it. Thanks for that question. Nice question. I like having a little bit of a question I can riff on. Appreciate that, Astronaut. But you do get addicted to it, don't you? I mean, everybody here that's watching this right now, if you're not an artist, I'm just curious. Hit me up in the live chat. Say, look, I'm not an artist. I'm just enjoying watching you paint. I'm an engineer. I'm a police officer. I'm a whatever. Like, just let me know. If you're not an artist, but you're just watching this random guy on the internet painting right now, let me know in the live chat. Let me know. That's cool. I do sometimes get people who email me saying, not an artist or anything, just addicted to binge watching your videos. I'm like, well, that's weird, but cool. Awesome. I'm a little bit bothered right now. I'm a little bit bothered. I'm a little annoyed. I got 3 rocks, bang, 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 that are so similar that they're a little bit funky, and not in a good way. Not funky as in groovy, funky as in they're starting to stink a little bit. So I'm going to just diminish this one with a little bit of curling white water. And then I'm going to make another decision here. Hopefully it's the right one. I'm playing aesthetic chess. Charlotte, well, thank you, Charlotte. Appreciate you. Again, okay, so Charlotte, the brushes, you were asking the brushes that I'm using? Okay, so again, it's the 5/8 dagger brush, and it's also the Series 275 angular brush. And I'm alternating between these 4 brushes. This is primarily what I've used for the entire demo, with the exception of my initial SketchUp, which is my Shiraz pointed round. I'm sorry I didn't mention that, but that's a number 2, Shiraz pointed round. A synthetic brush. That's what I use to line up the composition. Only a little bit of that faint lines coming through. Are you enjoying the video so far? Are you enjoying the live stream? I hope you are. If you are, please do me a huge favor. Hit the like button for me. It really does help push this out to more people. I don't ask that often enough, but please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And that really also helps this get out there to more people. If you've enjoyed this 2-hour free lesson, and in about half an hour, it'd be 2 hours, then please do me a huge favor and let me know by hitting that like button, and appreciate that so much. So I think what I'm going to do is add to this by just adding another rock. And I think that extra rock, what it did is it closed up the gap here and made that gap by comparison a little more open. So whenever I'm trying to shift something and make some moves, I want to change one thing and then just make one move at a time and then just watch that relationship. You know what? I'm not saying the relationship's perfect, but I'm happier with that. That one looks a little bit more natural to me. I'm just trying not to create even order and pattern where you don't normally see it in nature. Okay. Let's start to bring some light in here, a little more character, get some glow in this wave, some silver there in that foreground with the shimmer in the sand. But first what we're going to do is establish that foreground. You can see as you start to add to your tones and your layers and start creating a bit of depth here, you can see that what happens is your imprimatura starts to show through. I love the little pop of hot color coming through, like a little bit of intense warmth. I love that stuff. When you look at the close-up, you can really see a little bit of that coming through. But context is everything. So time will tell. As soon as we establish that foreground, we'll really know if it's working or not. But if you think it's working, hit the like button. Go on. Do it. Hit the like button. Now, it's all about relationships, right? I had something funky monkey going on here with these rocks. But over here, I've got something happening. These two triggers on top of the spines on my T-Rex that's sitting here taking a nap on the beach, right? I can almost see a dinosaur head in there. I don't like it. I'm going to do whatever it's happening with one rock, I want to do something else with another rock. So what I'm going to do here is add to this rock and see if I can just change the relationship between those shapes. Now you might be going, but that's not in your photo reference. Yeah, but at a certain point, I have to ask myself, what does the painting need? The viewer is going to be looking at this painting, and if they know the west coast of New Zealand, they'll be looking at this painting going, oh my goodness, that's the west coast of New Zealand. I was standing right in that spot. My wife and I took a trip down there. I know exactly where that is. And here, I'll be chuckling to myself going, haha, I changed the rocks on you, fella, didn't I? You didn't know. Haha, joke's on you. But this is the thing, you can actually make these moves and changes, but how often is it that we're afraid to change our reference material? We're afraid to change the painting because we're not presented with that as an option. It's an option. Just go ahead and change up your painting and give your painting what it needs. Now, I'm not saying that's a perfect move or the right move. I'm just saying that now these two things are different, whereas before they were the same and it was a little bit distracting for me. I'm a bit happier with that as a relationship anyway. Callie says, to be honest, I'm impressed with his ability to keep talking and making it interesting without stopping. Yeah, but afterwards I have to spend about an hour just to breathe because I'm a bit oxygen deprived at the moment. Anyway. Oh, Balsam Art has to go to a work meeting. Oh, no. Well, I'm sorry about that, but you can catch the replay. I'll keep this up on my channel. Jim Meeker has mentioned a name there, Trust Richards. My goodness, I'm trying to channel those Trust Richard vibes right now. He's one of my favorite. Dan Beresford Artist is here. Hey, welcome, Dan. Which painting out of your seascapes and landscapes challenged you the most mentally and physically? Dan, that's a great question, brother. You know, the one that I was really challenged by, and there's because there was also a lot going on at the time, and that was a painting I did back in 2016. It's on my website. It's called Southern Spectre, and it was a painting depicting an area called Smith's Point down in Yallingup in Western Australia. Are there any Aussies in the house besides you, Mr. Dan Beresford? Any Aussies in the house at all? Anybody watching from Western Australia? You're up early. 10 points for being here so early in the morning. But shout out to my Aussies. I spent 20 years over in Australia, or nearly 25 years. I met my wife over in Australia. She's not Australian, though. She's a Kiwi. But spent a lot of time there. A lot of great memories, a lot of very fond memories of Smith Point and Yallingup. And so this area was well known for epic waves and giant granite boulders, and I just wanted to capture the energy of this incoming, just humongous crashing wave, and it challenged me, it stretched me, but it was one of the most rewarding processes, and to this day it remains one of my favorite paintings that I've ever done. And it was done early on, man, like back in 2016. So, yeah, good times. But the whitewater was a challenge, the foam was a challenge, the rocks were a challenge, the atmosphere, everything about it I just found really, really challenging. So, I didn't tell you about that color, but you can see what I'm doing here. Bit of burnt umber, bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of cobalt blue, some white. I got a bit of Cremnitz white here on the brush. A Series 274, again, and this is helping me create some smoothness and softness. This is my strategy for breaking this line before it exits the canvas, is actually just don't worry about it. Paint across it, feather it out a little bit, so that way it softens it before it goes off. And I'll bring the sharpness right here where I need it against the sand and that rock shadow right there. So If I need a little more softness, dry brush. I haven't actually gotten any paint out on this. Rub that through. There's a little bit of that imprimatura coming through. That's okay by me. A bit interesting there. And so that will just be a shadow, diffused. It will go away. That's my theory anyway. Jean's here. Hello, Jean. How are you? Good morning, Sunshine Coast. Awesome. Hey, good to see you. Watching from Hutchison Island, Florida, says Randy. Hey, Randy, welcome. Hey, so Ash Kennedy's here from Tasmania. Jax is here from New South Wales. Are there any Western Australians here? Is there anybody from WA watching right now? Let me know. I'd be so impressed if there is, because it's going to be really early in the morning. I think they're 5 hours earlier. So that would be around, I cannot math. Do not ask me to math. Was that going to be 4:30 in the morning? Are you crazy like me? Does anybody else here wake up at 4:30? Now, I slept in today. I better check myself, but I'm normally up and in the studio around that time. So I've got a nice subdued gray here. Let's go ahead and get some paint out. I'm stalling. I'm dilly-dallying around. Let's do it. Okay, so a little bit of burnt umber again, a little bit of transparent red oxide, a little bit of transparent yellow oxide. Just a hint of warmth will help me bring this foreground shoreline a little bit further forward and start painting in here some of these gaps between what will be my water here just trickling through the sand. And when I say sand, actually here on this beach, these are very fine pebbles. These are and it's so beautiful when you look down and you look at these little pebbles. They're little tiny gemstones. They're little rounded balls of quartz, and there's all sorts of different colors of quartz crystal here on the beach. And there's different, like, I want to say jasper, but I don't know. But there's these bright red stones as well. Probably not jasper. Jasper would be too valuable to just be sitting there on a beach. But it's like a gemstone beach. It's so neat. So if you're in New Zealand right now and you're watching this and you want to see this scene, well, it's on the west coast, just north of Haast. So South Island, west coast, just north of Haast. Beautiful, beautiful seascape it is. I love this part of the world. So again, my Academy members over there on Tisch Academy are going to have access to the reference material as well as the full version of this tutorial when I end up making this a monster painting. And you know what? I'm calling it now. I think I will. I'm kind of fond of this one. I think there's something going on here that's neat. I'm enjoying it. So a little bit more blue coming through here. I'm going to be reflecting a little bit of that sky. This clip here is in my way. Why are you in my way? Don't be in my way. I just need to move that down. There we go. So a little bit of that sky color working through will hopefully give me an indication that some of that sand or those pebbles have just been washed. They're drawing back and it's starting to reflect what's above. And I love some of this character and quality that's being dragged through the sand. So as I move towards my left now, because I want to start creating some of that silvery effect, I'm going to need to lighten my tone. So a little bit of titanium white, a little bit of Kremnitz white. And let's start to lighten the tone of some of this gray and drag that through. Now, one way, I got a great question earlier. Forgive me, I forgot who asked that. Beg your pardon, but a great question about clean color. Oh, that's right. That was from the super chat again. So that's bad form. I've forgotten the name. I beg your pardon. But anyway, how to create that clean color. So another way is creating within your painting zones. And so what I'm doing is I'm sticking to my zones. I'm working from zone to zone, and I'm bringing those edges together. And because I'm in zones and I'm not trying to paint over the top of myself here, it's allowing me to create areas of the painting, and then when you bring those edges together, it just creates that clean color that you're after. So rather than paint the entire sand, I just paint the area and work up to the edge where the water is going to go. And so that really allows me to make sure that my colors don't mix too much. They are mixing a little bit, but not too much with the surrounding areas. Now, we don't want too much stripy. That would be a bad thing. So I might have to blend some of these areas and work on this relationship between stripes and sand a little bit later. I know what you're saying. Well, you didn't say you were going to have anything coming out the corner. Yeah, but not a harsh line out the corner. So I'm going to work out a way to diffuse that a little bit too. Now, it's not to say you can't work over the top of some of these areas. It's just that it will have a consequence. So I continually reload my brush if I've got to work back into the wet paint. Reload that brush and carry on again. Now here, where we've got a bit of wet sand, and it's reflecting that rock, that deep shadow of that rock, it's going to be a bit darker. So I'm going to get back out my shadow brush that I was using for my deeper rock shadows. And we'll start to have some of these stripes and reflections cutting through. Cut a little bit of that through some of that wet sand. And I'll break this apart just a little bit more, and hopefully that will press that down a little bit. Right. Getting somewhere, enjoying it. I hope you are too. Again, if you're enjoying the live stream, if you're getting something out of it, then please do me a huge favor. Hit the like button. If you'd like to take your techniques even further, if you want to learn about oil painting, if you want to paint portraits, landscapes, seascapes, if you want to elevate your artwork, if you want to go pro, then check out Tisch Academy. The top link is in the description. And again, get yourself a free 7-day trial. Try it for free on me. I'm so confident you're going to love it that I'm going to give you a free trial. You can try it for free for 7 days. You'll get that automatically when you sign up. And also, if your free trial lapses for any reason, you can keep going for 30 days, and you can get a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. That's how much I believe in what we've got going on Tisch Academy. So check it out and find out why we have such an awesome, thriving community over there. It's really cool. It's really fun. And I really thank you and appreciate you for checking that out. So again, you'll find the top link down there in the description. So far, we've got all of the major pieces here. So now what we're going to start doing is just starting to tighten it up. But one thing I really want to do is I want to bring that light. I got to bring the light. There's a color note here that's bothering me just a little bit on this rock. So I'm just going to get a few indications here of some chisel-y shapes. We can break this up a little bit later with some other colors. It's just too much green coming through right there. just where that rock comes down. All right, I got a question here from Ash. How you doing? If you could sit down with any artist or a couple of artists, alive or past, who would you like to spend time with and what draws you to them? I have never been asked that before. My goodness, that's almost too difficult to answer, but I'll give it a go. Two artists I'd love to spend time with. Oh gosh. Okay. I'd love to spend the afternoon with the guy who, or gal, or a group of people who painted the animals on the roof of Altamira in Spain. Okay, or the Chavot cave, and I think that would be cool. So we're going back a few thousand years there of what was going on there. I think that would be cool. I'd like to sit down with that artist, pick their brain and figure out what was driving them. There's some animal drawings there that, I think there was a famous quote from Picasso after he'd seen these cave paintings. And he came out and he just said, "We've learned nothing. We've learned nothing." Like, these drawings are so good. And I'm not talking like real primitive stuff. If you have a look at some of these drawings, like they've got anatomy, like an understanding of the animal. It's really interesting. So that would be cool. I'm so fond of Bierstadt. I'd love to pick Bierstadt's brain. Thomas Moran, of course, love to pick his brain. I know I've mentioned too many already. I think Sorolla was dialed in and just seemed like such an intense craftsman and really just, yeah, amazing. I think his energy and his passion for what he was doing, I think would be infectious, so I'd love to be around that. I'd like to spend an afternoon with Lucy Kemp Welch. You know, the way she painted horses, it still inspires me so much, and I'm really just eaten up with her art at the moment because I'm painting a bunch of horses at the moment. And so, yeah, a great question. But yeah, that's that. How about you? Hit me up in the live chat or in the comments if you're watching the replay. Who would you like to spend an afternoon with, live or past? I gave you a bunch of past artists. Living artists, I got to get out there one day and paint plein air alongside Joe Paquette. Love Joe. I got to get in the studio and draw with Thomas Fluharty one day. You know, that guy, as you're speaking of dialed in, I want to just sit in the corner of the room and watch Michael Klein do what he does with peonies and roses and lilies and various things. Like, the guy's a master. There's so many great artists working today. You know, I want to pick Nicholas O'Leary's brain, figure out how he does what he does. Like, what is that guy doing with paint to get his images to look like that? Good night. Too many great artists. Too many. Oh, Jen, I love you. Hey, Ollie, shout out to Ollie Sig right there. I'd love to spend time with the late, great Bob Ross. You know what, dude? Me too. Me too. Now, some people might go, "Oh, Bob Ross was the man." That guy got more people painting than, I don't know, than anyone else. Like, that guy, and he just seemed like such a good dude. So, love that. Love that. I think that's fantastic. I'm getting into details now, but it's so much fun in this wet paint, dragging through a few of these little notches and cracks and crinkles and stuff in my rock. We can get a little character here in this rock. The live stream is coming to a close. I got about another 10 minutes. I might go 5-minute extra just for you because I love you, appreciate you. Thank you for being here. You're wonderful. Thank you for spending this time with me here in the studio. You could be doing all kinds of things with your day, but you've chosen to take this time and hang out with me in the studio while we paint this little seascape together. I hope this has inspired you in some way and you've gotten something out of it. And if you did, again, if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that like button. It really helps push this out in the algorithm and helps more and more people see content like this. And so if you felt that this was helpful, really appreciate you doing that. So the next thing that we've got to do is we've got to bring the light. Oh, Ash, that's wonderful. Yeah, you know what, Carly Grace, she's the bee's knees. She's awesome, so dialed in, great at business, great at painting, just got a passion for art. She's doing really interesting work and really interesting projects she gets involved in. Love her energy and enthusiasm. So yeah, that's a great choice there as well. Absolutely. Rubens, Durer, and Chamberlain. Absolutely. Would that be Trevor Chamberlain, Gigi? Thomas Jonas says, I started learning by watching Bob Ross. A lot of us did, yeah. Bierstadt, Payne, and Monstead. Payne would be cool to hang out with. So would Peter Mork Monstead. That would be great. How do you stay focused on your art when you're struggling with a specific piece or a composition? I put it away, David. I put it away for what's called cook time. Trust me, brother, I have so many paintings that I'm struggling with. Yeah, really. So many paintings that I'm struggling with. I just don't sweat it. I don't get emotional about it. I'm not saying you are, but I don't, because it can upset us, right? Like, let's be honest. So I don't let it bother me. I don't let it get to me or frustrate me. But what I do is I put it up and go, you know what? I'm just not in a headspace to figure this out right now. I'm going to put it up for what I call cook time. Now, cook time is basically where you let the idea simmer and cook. You put it on the back burner. You don't want to burn it. You don't want to overcook it. But you put it on the back burner and you let that thing simmer. And what's simmering? It's your brain that's simmering. Your brain is basically working out the next move, the next idea. So don't be afraid to put it away, get onto something else, work on it when you're fresh. And after a while, you might find a couple of weeks go by and then the light bulb suddenly goes off and you're like, ah, dude, I know exactly what to do with that painting. I know exactly what I'm going to do with that. I do that all the time. You'd be shocked if you saw how many paintings I have on the go in the studio right now. Let's just do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll count this one as 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I'm being serious. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 that I can see right now on the go right now in the studio. Yeah, I know I have problems, okay? Don't worry about it. QQQ, I've seen you do wildlife, portraits, and landscapes. What kind of painting drawing do you like the most? Stephen, great question. I answered that one a little bit earlier, but I like whatever I'm working on at the time. I love it all, mate. It's really hard to decide between painting portraits and painting landscapes, and then when I'm painting a landscape, I want to do a seascape, and when I'm doing a seascape, I want to turn my attention to some epic wildlife or something. So I love it all. I love it all. What I got to do is think of a clever way to combine all of that and still life in one painting. Do you think we could do it? I don't know. I guess I would call that genre kitchen sink painting. So just a few little sky reflections off my rock. I'm happy with the shattered, broken structure there. I'm liking the way this water is sweeping up here. It's got a good energy. It feels like I'm coming into the composition, back out through that rock, back over here and back down in. I don't know about you. But anyway, let's go ahead and add a little bit of white now. And I saved this brush for the end because I like my highlights to be a little bit thicker. And so here, this is a dagger again, but it's a little bit smaller. So this one's 1/4 inch. Over here on the palette, you can see the size of that, about 1/4 inch. And we save our tonal best for last, right? Now the lighting effect is very subtle. I don't want to overdo this. I don't want to go for pure white. I still want to have a bit of that silvery quality. So I'm going to mix a light gray. I'm going to mix into that a little bit of liquid impasto because I want thickness here. Nothing reflects light like thick, light paint. So it's a lighter tone and it's a bit thicker. I need some opacity here. And so let's start to get some of this breaking, shattering foam. Just catching a little bit of that light. Now that you've seen what I've mixed, let me go ahead and show you the close-up view. I love the random shapes that waves make while they're breaking and tearing themselves apart as they shatter against rocks. And so one of the tricks is I'm going and I'm continually reloading my brush as I move along here. And as I reload my brush, it allows me to create a bit of a cleaner highlight, a cleaner edge. And so I had some indication here previously about where the edge of this wave was going to go. It's barreling down. It's about to hit this rock. It's not quite there. But it'll just indicate a bit of that barrel of the wave as it comes in. And then right here, it's just spilling over into that rock. So continue to reload that brush. Don't exit the canvas with a line. So we'll just break that one up before we exit. Just a little indication of the top of the wave. Down here in this section, we'll get a little bit of light sneaking into that. Let's go ahead and get, and remember I drew an arrow there before. Right through that notch, I think, is where we're going to have the light. So light shining here. So it's going to be shining on everything in that sort of direction on that side. And it's going to sweep across and shine at that angle on this side. I imagine that the light's going to be off the canvas about 3 or 4 inches. So it's off the picture plane. So I'm thinking about the direction of some of these highlights and shadows, and I don't want to paint out the whole thing, just an accent here and there, just to give it a bit of a lift. Oh, Lorenzo, that's very kind of you. Hey, art lover, welcome. Finally get to join you live. Yeah, awesome. Ash Kennedy says she has 4 paintings on the go. All right, that's cool. QQQ from Nathan. Do you light your palette with a separate 5,000 Kelvin light? I don't know if it's quite 5,000 Kelvin, but it's a neutral white, and I've tried to match it as close as I can. To be honest, I do struggle with the light on the palette, so I'm momentarily here going to be thinking of a way that I can get a better quality light on that palette. And I will be moving to the same light that is illuminating my painting, will be the light that I use on that palette. So just lifting out a few highlights here and there, a little bit of that sea foam, reflecting a bit of that light that's shining down from above. I'm applying this with just the blade edge of my dagger. Good fun. There's one thing I love is those patterns that the whitewater makes as it comes in. It's just this fluid thing. It's almost like an animal, like a wild animal crawling up onto the beach. Interesting energy to it. And the way it kind of breaks apart feels sometimes a little bit like spider web, the way it just forms this intricate but random pattern. So on the big version, I'm looking forward to painting in areas like this down here. Now I think I need just a couple of reflections of light off those rocks. There's not quite enough there. And I'd like to see, there's something about waves. I'd like to see a little bit of glow on that wave. I think that would work. So let's get in there and get a little bit of that effect. I'm going to go back to my Angular Series 275. I'm going to wipe this off. I know you're thinking dangerous. You had rock color there. I know, but it's such a nice brush. I got to use it. So let's get back over here with the palette. You can see an indication of color in the reference image on the right. So let's mix up a little bit of that light color for the wave. And here, we've got cobalt teal. I'm going to use a little bit of Hansa yellow, nice and transparent, a little bit more Hansa, a little bit more teal. And I'm using the same white that was in there previously for my highlights that I was applying to that white water. I still want to have a little bit of that color there, so I'm not going to change the whole pile. So that's roughly the color that I'm using. Let's go ahead and get that in there on that wave in particular. Let's push that to one side, and I'll go ahead and switch these off. And just a touch of light at the top of the wave. Now, sometimes I really overdo it, you know. There's so much glow coming through that it just seems a little unrealistic. So I want to get the balance right, and just a subtle little amount of light coming through is all I'm looking for on that one. But you know, there is another wave just breaking in the background. I don't want it to be as strong, but I think just a touch of color back there will help, just a little bit. Okay, now, reflection off our rocks. What are we going to do? I'm going to go back to that color that I had, that wave color. We're going to wipe off that brush. And mix up here just a little bit of color. I'm going off the palette here, off the screen. We've got some of our previous violets and sky colors that we were using in those shadows. And right here, there's an interesting angle. So that's reflecting light in an interesting way right there, just along that edge. Some of them present a bit of a flat shape facing us as the viewer. So I just want to make sure that it doesn't look like too much of a dull, flat shape. So just a few of these little finer lines, maybe a flat top to that rock, just to give it a little dimension. See how it just lifts out the shape just a little bit? And I think maybe echoing that over here, there's a little too much imprimatur showing through, so we'll just add a bit of an angle to the backside of that rock. And then I think our rocks are going to have to sheen a little bit of shine off of them. There's just not quite enough light reflecting off the backs of those rocks. Let's get a bit of that in there. So here and there, where we have the right angle, we can just show a little spot of light there, reflect a little bit of light off the top surface of some of these. And then this one down here. Oh, hey. Love all that you do, Andrew. I've followed you for years and have many of your classes. You're so inspiring. Enjoy the tech info. Awesome. I'm in Titirangi, Auckland. Hey, awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Welcome. Awesome. Thank you for showing us how to use your dagger brushes. I have several and love them. Thank you, Karen. Can you fix your painting if you've already put retouch varnish? How would you? Yes, Kathy, absolutely you can. You can continue to paint over the top of retouch varnish. Or you can remove it. There's a couple of options there. So I'm just going to tweak some of my highlights here on my crashing water over some of these rocks. So got a little bit of water crashing over that one. And then finally, we've got, again, remember what I was saying about that light coming straight down through here, and look at our reference material. If I pull that up just again here, you look at this reference material and you can see that there's just a little bit of a sheen off that sand, just a little bit. So let's get a little touch of that in there. And if I just apply it with the blade of the dagger brush, just want a hint of it. But this is where I'll start moving towards a little bit more of a pure titanium white. And then down here, maybe we could get just a touch more. Now, I don't want that to be the only place I put the pure titanium white. I might want to just draw attention to somewhere in that wave to really draw the eye. We'll put a couple little flicks of lighter tone in there, just to bring it out a bit more. Yeah, MD Haven. Yeah, look, yeah, don't feel bad about having 3 paintings to go. Try 26. Wow. I really hope that you've enjoyed this live stream. Is the painting okay? Did you enjoy this? I'm fishing now. Aren't I? Isn't it terrible? But if you enjoyed this, then hit that like button for me. And if you're not already subscribed, I hope that after watching this, I have earned your subscription. I'd love for you to join me again in another live stream, so make sure you click the bell notification icon so you're notified when I upload another video. But before we go, just one quick reminder, please do me a huge favor and do yourself a huge favor. Click the top link in the description down below and check out Tisch Academy. It's art school, only better. No lock-in contracts, done at your convenience. Cancel anytime, but you're going to get a free 7-day trial when you sign up. And it's loaded with content. There's over 300 hours in the video library. Can you believe over 300 hours? And you could have access to that immediately for the next 7 days for free. But if you stick around, that also comes around with a free 30-day money-back guarantee, and it's just a monthly subscription. That's all it is. And you also get access to the exclusive community, which is amazing. There's so many incredible people over there as part of our community. So Academy tier, VIP is $25 a month. Studio tier is $15 a month. What do you get for that? Again, you get access to the entire video library. You get access to all of this content. And not only feature-length painting demonstrations, there's critique videos there. There's art business videos there. And also, the big thing is live streams. Every week, I'm going live from my Academy. So if you enjoyed this live stream that we've just had here today, that's a taste of some of the stuff that you can expect over in the Academy. And some of those live streams are going for up to 5 hours long. Next week, I've got an epic 5-hour live stream all about painting water and how to get clear, reflective water. That's going to go for 5 hours. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be epic. Click that link down below. Sign up. Don't miss out on that one. You'll want to see that. Trust me. So that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much again for checking out Tisch Academy. Thank you for being here as part of this live stream. Really enjoyed hanging out with you. And I will see you again in another live stream or another video. Thanks again for tuning in. Appreciate it. We'll see you soon.